Let's jump right into this explainer. Today we are unpacking a highly proven framework designed to take those devastating life setbacks and flip them, turning them into a cycle of unlimited success. If you've ever felt like your circumstances are totally dictating your future, or if you're just feeling completely stuck in a rut, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to this.
So let's start with a really tough question. Is your true potential locked away? Think about Arthur for a second. Now, Arthur was a brilliant guy, straight A's, super talented, came from a well-off family. But get this, he hopped through 8 different jobs in just 3 years. He actually quit one gig after only 4 days, literally because he expected his boss to adapt to him. He was completely paralyzed by this exaggerated fear of failure, utterly convinced he just hadn't found an employer capable of drawing out his potential. Sound familiar? Honestly, we all have a little bit of Arthur in us, kind of just waiting for someone else to hand us the key to our own greatness.
Well, the blueprint to actually unlock that greatness comes from Success Secrets by George Tan. Now, George is an author and HR professional, but more importantly, he literally climbed out of extreme poverty and physical abuse. He mapped his way out of the darkness, and he recognized Arthur's struggle instantly because he lived his own version of it. He put this material together to give us the exact practical tools we need to unlock our potential ourselves. No waiting on anyone else. So what is the invisible enemy keeping you or Arthur stuck? George calls it the saddle mindset. SADDL. It stands for self-pity, arrogance, distractions, daydreams, laziness, and exaggerated fear. This right here is the inner villain causing all that self-sabotage. When you're stuck in the saddle trap, you're literally blocking your own path to excellence. You know, we might blame our boss or our parents or the economy, but actually, saddle is the real thief stealing your opportunities. And George knows exactly how paralyzing this mindset can be, because like I said, he lived it. He grew up in an incredibly poor neighborhood. His father was a frustrated coolie and an alcoholic who horribly abused him, even going so far as to label his own son a jinx. To put this into perspective, at school recess, while all the other kids were eating rainbow ice cream, George had a single precious 5-cent coin for a bowl of noodles, only to be told the bowl actually cost 10 cents. Coping with that harsh reality, he basically turned into a tough street kid, totally addicted to the 3 V's: vulgarism, vandalism, and violence. But the most heartbreaking moment? That happened in primary 3. George was publicly humiliated by a teacher he remembers as Miss Tigress. She yelled at him in front of the entire class. "Who says you can wear long black socks to school?" Well, George tried to explain that his only pair of white socks were wet. His family couldn't even afford slippers, let alone a second pair of school socks. But instead of an ounce of empathy, she chased him out of the room, made him take off his shoes, and forced him to walk barefoot around the school field while hundreds of kids just jeered and laughed at him. I mean, it was a totally devastating blow that just crushed whatever self-esteem he had left. But his journey from a struggling, so-called gangster kid to an elite scholar was definitely not a straight line. In secondary school, a PE teacher finally gave him some much-needed affirmation, calling him Strong Boy, which sparked his motivation to quit those bad habits. But then, in junior college, he hit rock bottom again. He scored his first 0 on a math test, which plunged him into a depression so deep he even considered suicide. But he fought back. He joined the Navy, and at age 26, completely rebuilt his confidence by topping his diploma in personnel management. And then, just a year later, at 27, he was the top student in a master's program at George Washington University, all while serving full-time in the military. Absolutely incredible. Okay, so how exactly did he achieve this massive turnaround? He built an actionable, military-inspired life skills model called the PRAISE framework. Drawing on his naval training and strategy studies, this Success 6 formula outlines 6 key concepts: prize dream, rules, analysis, invincibility, strategy, and excellence. This is the exact antidote to that toxic saddle trap we talked about. For today's explainer, we're going to zero in on the first 2 foundational steps that really ignite this entire process. Let's start with a P, prize dream. There is a massive, massive difference between a passive, daydream-like wish and a true prize dream. If you just wish to do well, you're just sitting around waiting for it to happen. It's like hoping to win the lottery. But a prize dream? That is a desire so incredibly strong and so deeply valuable to you that you will willingly work through any struggle, sweat, and tears to achieve it. It is your ultimate motivator. But here's the catch. While it's absolutely vital to dream big, practical reality dictates that you have to start small.
If you're currently failing in school or totally stuck in your career, the thought of becoming a top scholar or a CEO right out of the gate might actually terrify you into giving up before you even start. So start small. Aim just to pass an exam first. Once you pass, then aim to do well. Set that huge, massive dream aside in the back of your mind until you've built up the momentum to actually be ready for it.
Now, breaking down the R in PRAIS. This stands for internal rules. We usually think of rules as these external, annoying restrictions that stifle us, right? But internal rules, the ones you impose on yourself, they act as your lifetime creativity formula. They literally force you to think outside the box and break right out of the saddle trap. George outlines 5 critical internal rules you must adopt. Be different, be decisive, take control, never give up, and take ownership. Let's look at some real-world examples to really bring this to life. Take rule 1, be different. Look, most people are completely average. If you want to excel, you absolutely must do things differently. Just look at the American high jumper, Dick Fosbury. He found the existing jumping techniques too complicated, so he dared to go against the grain by jumping backward. I mean, people thought it was ridiculous at the time, but he won Olympic gold in 1968, and today, pretty much every single high jumper uses the Fosbury flop. Next up is Rule 2, be decisive. Tiger Woods demonstrated incredible decisiveness when he completely changed his core golf swing in 2003. Think about that. He was already at the top of his game, but he felt he had a flaw. It cost him in the short term. He definitely slipped in the rankings, but he didn't waver and he didn't panic. By sticking decisively to his new strategy, he regained his #1 spot in spectacular fashion. For Rule 3, taking control, let's look at actress Michelle Yeoh. She perfectly embodies taking control of her own destiny. Instead of letting directors dictate her physical limits or relying on stunt doubles, she insisted on performing almost all of her own dangerous stunts. That raw physical dedication earned her massive global respect and landed her legendary roles in Hollywood. She didn't wait for the perfect outcome, she created it. Now, 1008. That is the exact number of times Colonel Harlan Sanders was rejected while trying to sell his chicken recipe. Can you imagine? He was 65 years old, almost entirely penniless, literally sleeping in his car just to save money. He persevered through 1008 no's before finally getting the single yes that launched Kentucky Fried Chicken. Talk about Rule 4, never give up. Finally, Rule 5, take ownership. This means stepping up when things go terribly wrong and flat out refusing to blame others. Just look at Craig Barrett, the CEO of Intel back in 2004. After a rough year where shares lost 34% of their value, he didn't point fingers at the market or the economy. He literally dropped to his knees at an industry conference to beg forgiveness from his clients, completely owning his management missteps. Now that is true ownership. So I have to ask you, what are your internal rules? Do your current rules tell you it's okay to be late, to procrastinate, or to point the finger when things get tough? Take a real, honest moment to evaluate if your internal rules are actively helping you achieve your prized dream, or if they're the exact things hurting you and keeping you trapped in that saddle mindset. To tie this all together, how do we actually escape this saddle trap using praise? First, you've got to recognize your saddle behaviors. Identify that self-pity and fear holding you back. Second, clearly define your specific prize dream. Third, establish those new internal rules we just talked about. Fourth, accept full 100% responsibility for your outcomes. And finally, use these life skills to turn your past setbacks into incredible setups for your future. We've covered a truly remarkable journey today, seeing firsthand how someone can go from being an abused, struggling kid failing math to a highly successful thought leader. So I want to leave you with this powerful, provocative question, echoing George Tan's core philosophy. Will you give yourself a second chance? Look, it doesn't matter what your grades were or how many jobs you've hopped through. You can always rewrite your story. Never give up. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope you leave today absolutely ready to chase down your prize dream.